It all started the day Mrs. Langley moved in next door. She was a petite woman in her late 60s, with sharp blue eyes that seemed to see right through you. The moment she stepped out of the moving truck, she looked around the neighborhood like she was assessing every soul who lived there. When she saw me watching from my porch, she smiled. Not a friendly smile, but one that said, "I already know you." At first, I thought she was just another nosy neighbor. Every community has one, right? The type who knows who's dating who forgot to take their trash out, who gets home too late. But Mrs. Langley was different. She didn't just know gossip. She knew details that she shouldn't. One evening, as I was taking out the garbage, she called out from her porch. "How's your mother doing? I heard she's having trouble sleeping again." I froze. My mother lived 3 states away. I hadn't told anyone in this town about her insomnia, not even my closest friend, Claire. I forced a smile. "She's fine, thanks," I replied, trying not to sound unnerved. Mrs. Langley just nodded knowingly, rocking gently on her chair. "Good. Tell her the valerian root is working better now, isn't it?" My blood ran cold. That night, I couldn't shake the unease. How did she know that? My mother had only mentioned using valerian root in a late-night phone call 2 nights ago. No one else knew. No one could have known. Days passed, and her strange knowledge grew worse. When I painted my living room pale green, she commented the next morning, "That color doesn't suit you. Makes the house look smaller." But she hadn't been inside. I'd kept the curtains drawn. When I got promoted at work, she congratulated me before I'd even told anyone. Not even my boss had officially announced it yet. At first I thought maybe she had a friend at my office, or maybe she had somehow hacked into my emails. But the more it happened, the less logical it became. She knew things that no one could possibly know, things that even I barely remembered. One Sunday afternoon, I was mowing the lawn when she appeared by the fence. Her voice was almost gentle. "Your father used to do that every Sunday, too. Same time, same frown when the mower wouldn't start." I stopped the machine instantly. My father had died 20 years ago. She couldn't have known him. I stared at her, trying to find words. "How do you know that?" Her lips curved slightly. "Oh, honey, I've known your family for a long time. Longer than you realize." That night, I dreamed of my old house, the one I grew up in, the creaky steps, the smell of dust and cedar. And on the porch, there she was, sitting in the same rocking chair, smiling at me with those blue eyes. When I woke, the memory stuck like glue. Had I seen her before? Maybe as a child. I decided to look into it. The next day, I visited the county records office. Mrs. Langley's house had been built in the 1950s, and I was shocked to discover she'd owned it before. Her name appeared in property records from nearly 40 years ago. But that couldn't be right. She would have been in her 20s then, maybe early 30s, yet she looked almost exactly the same in the old photograph attached to the file. The woman didn't age. That night, I peeked through my window toward her home. A soft yellow glow filled her living room. I could see her silhouette, still, perfectly still, sitting in that same rocking chair. Then she turned her head slowly toward my window as if she'd known I was watching. I dropped to the floor, heart pounding. The next morning, she was at my door. "I made muffins," she said with that unsettling smile. "Blueberry, your mother's favorite." I hesitated before taking them. "How do you know what my mother likes?" She tilted her head. "Because she told me, years ago, when she lived here." My throat tightened. My mother never lived in this neighborhood. Her eyes flickered with something cold. "Oh, but she did. Not in this lifetime, perhaps. But here, yes." I laughed nervously. "Like reincarnation?" Mrs. Langley didn't answer. She just handed me the basket of muffins and turned to leave. "Be careful tonight," she murmured. "The house remembers more than you think." I watched her walk away, the morning mist curling around her ankles. That evening, as the sun set, I sat in my living room, that same pale green room that she had somehow known about, and I noticed something I hadn't before. The air vent behind the couch was slightly ajar. When I pulled it open, I found a small bundle wrapped in yellowed cloth. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Old photos of my family. There was my mother, as a child, standing in front of a house eerily similar to mine. There was my father, younger, holding a baby. Me, though the date printed on the back said 1978. I wasn't born until 1991. And there, in the corner of one of the photos, sat Mrs. Langley, rocking in her chair, the same knowing smile on her face. My hands shook. I could barely breathe. That night, the walls felt alive. Every creak made my skin crawl. Around midnight, I heard faint whispering coming from the vent, voices, soft and overlapping like echoes of a conversation, my parents' voices. Then hers. I crawled closer, pressing my ear to the metal. "Not yet," Mrs. Langley's voice whispered. "She doesn't remember." I stumbled back, terrified. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I stormed to her house, but she wasn't there. The door was unlocked. Inside, everything was spotless, almost untouched. No dishes, no clothes, no signs of anyone living there. Just one thing left behind on the kitchen counter, an old black and white photograph in a cracked frame. It was my family again, my mother, father, and a little girl who looked just like me, only this time someone had written on the back in neat, fading cursive, "For my dear neighbor, until next time." That was the moment I realized Mrs. Langley hadn't just known my family, she'd been part of it. And then that night, I heard the creak of a rocking chair inside my living room. I froze where I stood, the sound echoing softly through the darkened house. It was slow, rhythmic, and unmistakable, the steady creak of old wood moving under weight. My throat went dry. The chair in my living room wasn't even wooden. There was no reason for that sound to exist. For a moment, I told myself it was the pipes, or the wind, or maybe my imagination feeding on fear. But then it came again, louder this time. Closer. Creak. Pause. Creak. I forced myself to move, my bare feet silent against the floorboards as I reached for the nearest lamp. My fingers trembled as I turned it on. The light spilled across the room and my breath caught. There, in the corner near the vent, sat a rocking chair that hadn't been there before. Dark, polished wood, worn at the armrests, a thin quilt draped across the back. The same one from the photos, the same one Mrs. Langley always sat in. It moved slowly on its own, as if invisible hands were setting it in motion. I couldn't look away. My body screamed to run, but my legs refused to obey. The air around the chair shimmered faintly like heat rising from pavement. Then I heard her voice, soft, almost loving. "You found the pictures, didn't you?" I turned sharply. Mrs. Langley was standing in my doorway, dressed in her usual pale cardigan, her face calm and unreadable. I hadn't heard her come in. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. Her eyes gleamed faintly in the lamplight. "You invited me," she said simply. "You always do." "I don't know what you're talking about. I never invited you into my house." She smiled faintly. "You don't remember. You never do. Not at first. It's always the same. You come back, the house chooses you, and I stay to help you remember who you are." I shook my head violently. "No! I bought this house 3 years ago. I've never seen you before you moved in." She took a step closer, her voice lowering. "And yet,
The house knew your name before you signed the deed. The walls recognized your touch. You think it's coincidence that you dreamed of me before we met?" My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I had dreamed of her, sitting on that porch, those same blue eyes watching me. I thought it was just stress, or maybe déjà vu. She continued, her tone almost tender. "Your mother lived here once. So did her mother before her. And before them, me. We're bound to this place, to its memory. It keeps us connected even when the world forgets." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. "You're saying we're, what, family?" Her smile deepened. "Something like that." I backed away slowly, my mind racing. "This is insane," I muttered. "You're insane." The rocking chair creaked again, harder now, as if responding to my disbelief. The light flickered, shadows stretching across the walls like reaching hands. Mrs. Langley didn't move, she just watched me, her eyes sorrowful. "I tried to warn you," she said softly. "The house remembers. It doesn't like when you deny it." Before I could answer, a loud bang shook the floor. The vent behind the couch burst open and a gust of freezing air swept through the room. Papers flew from the table, the lamp flickered violently, and the photographs I'd found scattered across the floor, faces blurring and fading as if the images themselves were being erased. Then a whisper filled the air. Dozens of voices, overlapping, crying, murmuring names I didn't recognize. The walls groaned like they were alive, shifting. My vision blurred, and for a moment I saw it. Faint outlines of figures moving through the walls, shadows of people that once were. Mrs. Langley stood perfectly still, eyes closed. "They're waking," she murmured. "They've been waiting for you." I stumbled backward toward the door, heart hammering in my chest. "I'm leaving," I shouted. "I'm done with this house, with you, with all of it." Her eyes snapped open. "You can't leave," she said sharply, her voice suddenly hard. "You never do. It always brings you back." I bolted out the front door into the cold night air, barely able to breathe. I didn't stop running until I reached the street corner, where I collapsed against a lamppost, gasping. I called Claire, my friend, the only person I could trust. She answered groggily, "What's wrong? It's past midnight." "Claire, listen, something's wrong with my house, with my neighbor. I think she's not normal." "Okay, slow down," she said, her voice calming. "Where are you?" "On Maple and 3rd. Please, can you come get me?" She agreed without hesitation, promising to be there in 10 minutes. When she arrived, I felt relief wash over me. I got into her car, trembling, trying to explain everything. The photos, the vent, the chair. She kept glancing at me, worried but skeptical. "You've been under a lot of stress," she said gently. "Maybe it's just—" "Don't say it's in my head," I snapped. "I saw her inside my house, Claire. She wasn't supposed to be there." She hesitated, then sighed. "Okay, we'll go to my place tonight, and tomorrow we'll call the cops, all right?" I nodded numbly, leaning back, trying to breathe. But as we passed my street, I looked toward my house one last time. The lights were on again, every window glowing bright yellow, too bright, like the house itself was burning from the inside. And in the upstairs window, I saw her, Mrs. Langley, rocking slowly in her chair, staring directly at me, lips moving soundlessly. Claire followed my gaze and frowned. "What is it?" I couldn't speak. I just pointed. But when she turned to look, the light was gone, the window dark. Claire shook her head. "See? Nothing's there." I wanted to believe her, I really did, but when we drove away, I looked down at my lap and saw something that hadn't been there before. A single old photograph resting on my knees. It was me, sitting in that same rocking chair, and written across the bottom, in that same neat cursive, were the words, "Welcome home." I stared at the photograph in disbelief, my hands shaking so violently that the edges of the photo fluttered like wings.
The picture looked old, printed in that faded sepia tone from another era, but it was me, down to the scar on my left wrist, the one I'd gotten as a kid falling off a bike. The chair beneath me in the photo was the same one that had appeared in my living room, the same one Mrs. Langley had rocked in for years. Only this photo couldn't have been taken. It shouldn't exist. Claire glanced over, her brow furrowing. "What's that?" I quickly folded the photo and stuffed it into my jacket pocket. "Nothing," I said too fast. She didn't press me, but her eyes lingered on me a moment longer before turning back to the road. The silence between us stretched until we reached her apartment. A small, cozy place that had always felt safe. But tonight, even the warmth of her lamps and the soft scent of lavender didn't calm the storm in my chest.
She handed me a blanket and some water. "You're pale," she said softly. "Maybe you just need sleep." Sleep. The word felt alien. I didn't want to close my eyes, not when every dream I'd had lately felt like a memory clawing its way back into my skull. Claire disappeared into her room, promising to check on me in the morning. I sat on the couch, staring at the city lights through her window, trying to piece together what was real and what wasn't. Then a faint sound brushed against the edge of my hearing. Creak. Slow, steady, familiar. I turned toward the far corner of the room. There was nothing there. No chair, no shadow, just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the clock. But the sound came again, closer now. Creak. Pause. Creak. I stood, heart pounding, scanning the room. The photograph in my pocket felt hot against my chest. I pulled it out again and gasped. The picture had changed. The background wasn't my living room anymore. It was Claire's. And the me in the photo wasn't sitting still. It was turning its head, looking straight at the camera, eyes wide, lips parted as if about to speak. A soft voice whispered near my ear, barely more than breath. "You can't run from home." I spun around, but no one was there. The air behind me shimmered faintly, like heat rising off pavement. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw the outline of that same rocking chair again, half-formed, transparent. And then the lamp flickered. I stumbled backward, clutching the photograph as the shadows around the room deepened and warped. My reflection in the glass door of the cabinet began to ripple. Then another face appeared behind mine. Mrs. Langley's. I screamed. Claire burst from her room, panic on her face. "What happened?" I pointed at the reflection, but it was gone. The shadows were still, harmless again. I tried to speak, but only managed a strangled whisper. "She's here." Claire reached for my shoulders, steadying me. "Okay, you're not okay," she said, voice trembling slightly. "I'm calling someone, maybe the police or—" "No police. You don't understand. They won't find her. They never do." Her expression hardened with concern. "You're scaring me." I wanted to tell her everything, but the words tangled in my throat. What proof did I have? A photo that changed? A chair that appeared out of nowhere? Whispers in the dark? To anyone else, I sounded insane. Maybe I was. I took a deep breath. Just, please, don't leave me alone tonight. Claire nodded reluctantly, and we stayed up together, the TV playing quietly in the background. For hours, nothing happened. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it all. The photo lay face down on the coffee table between us, motionless. Around 3 a.m., Claire started dozing off. I didn't blame her. The exhaustion was like a weight pressing on my chest. My eyes dropped despite every instinct screaming not to close them. When I opened them again, it was silent. The TV was off, the city lights outside had dimmed. For a moment, I thought I'd woken before dawn, until I noticed the air was too still, too thick. Claire wasn't on the couch anymore. Her blanket was there, but she was gone. "Claire?" I whispered. No answer. I stood and moved through the apartment, checking each room. The bathroom door was open, the light off. The kitchen was empty. Then I heard it, faintly, from behind the front door. Creak. I pressed my ear against it. The sound was coming from the hallway. Against my better judgment, I opened the door slowly. There she was. Mrs. Langley, standing in the dim corridor light, her cardigan buttoned neatly, her eyes glowing faintly blue. Behind her, at the far end of the hall, sat the rocking chair. "You shouldn't have left," she said quietly. "It's worse when you run."
I backed up instinctively, my hand gripping the doorknob. "What did you do with Claire?" "She's safe," Mrs. Langley said softly. "She's not part of this. You are." My voice broke. "Why me? What do you want?" Her gaze softened, almost pitying. "It's not about want. It's about remembering. You've forgotten who you were, what this house made of you. I've been keeping it alive all this time, waiting for you to come back." "I don't believe you," I hissed. Her smile returned, the same haunting curve I'd seen in every photo. "You don't have to, but you will." The air between us shifted, heavy with static. The hallway lights flickered, then went out entirely. In the dark, I felt movement, something brushing past my arm, cold and weightless. I slammed the door and locked it, backing away in panic. Then I saw it. The photograph on the coffee table was glowing faintly. The image changed again. This time, it showed the front of Claire's apartment building. A figure stood at her door. Me. I stumbled backwards, my breath catching in my throat. The reflection in the dark TV screen wasn't matching my movements anymore. It stood still, staring back at me, its eyes glowing faintly blue, just like hers. And then it smiled. My breath hitched as the reflection tilted its head, a mirror image that wasn't mine. I took a shaky step backward, every instinct in my body screaming to run, but my legs felt like lead. The air grew colder, pressing against my skin like invisible fingers. The reflected version of me, no, of something, lifted its hand slowly, palm open, as if inviting me closer. I shook my head violently. "No," I whispered. "You're not real." But the reflection smiled wider, a cruel, knowing smile. Then, in a single blink, it moved. Not inside the glass anymore, but behind me. I felt the whisper of breath against my ear. "Home," it said softly. I spun around, but there was no one there. My chest heaved as I clutched at my pounding heart, scanning every corner of the room. The silence was unbearable, heavy, electric. Then from the kitchen, a faint sound, a scraping, like a chair dragging across the floor. "Claire?" I called out, my voice trembling. No answer. I forced myself toward the sound, the apartment hallway stretching endlessly ahead of me, every shadow twitching at the edges of my vision. The kitchen light flickered. Once, twice, then held steady. The chair at the small dining table had moved, turned slightly toward me, and on the table was the photograph again, though I was sure I had left it in the living room, only now the image had changed once more. It wasn't me this time. It was Claire, standing in front of my old house, eyes hollow, her hands hanging limply at her sides. Behind her, the front door was open, and in the darkness of the doorway, Mrs. Langley's silhouette loomed. I dropped the photo and stumbled backwards, my mind reeling. The kitchen light exploded with a loud pop, plunging everything into darkness. My pulse roared in my ears as the same whispering I'd heard through the vents filled the air again. Only this time it was louder, circling me. "Remember. Welcome home. Come back to us." I clamped my hands over my ears, but the voices only grew stronger. overlapping until it felt like they were inside my skull. The walls pulsed faintly, their surface rippling like water. I ran to the front door, fumbling for the lock, but when I yanked it open, the hallway outside was gone. In its place stretched a dim, endless corridor, lined with peeling wallpaper identical to the one in my childhood home. "No," I breathed. "This isn't real." But my bare feet touched the creaking floorboards, and the smell hit me. The same scent of dust and cedar from my old house. And from somewhere deeper in that impossible hallway, I heard it. The slow, rhythmic creak of the rocking chair. Creak, pause, creak. I should have turned back. I should have shut the door and refused to move another inch. But something inside me, something deep and ancient, pulled me forward. My body moved before my mind could stop it. One step, then another, until I was standing before a doorway bathed in warm, golden light. It was my living room, or rather a version of it. Everything looked like it had years ago. The old rug my mother loved, the crooked family portrait, the scent of her vanilla candles. And there, by the window, sat Mrs. Langley in her rocking chair. Only she wasn't alone. Someone else sat beside her. It was Claire. She looked dazed, her eyes glassy and unfocused. As Mrs. Langley's hand rested gently on her shoulder, "Let her go," I choked out, my voice trembling with fury. Mrs. Langley looked up at me, her expression soft but unyielding. "She's not hurt," she said calmly. "She just doesn't remember yet." "Remember what?" I demanded, my hands curling into fists. Mrs. Langley gestured toward the wall behind her, and I saw dozens of photographs pinned there. Different eras, different people, but the same faces repeating across generations. My face, my mother's, my grandmother's, and always in the corner of each one, Mrs. Langley's quiet presence. "This house keeps its family close," she said gently. "We return, life after life, always drawn back to finish what was left undone. Some remember quickly, others take longer." "That's insane," I said. "You're talking about reincarnation, about curses. None of this makes sense." She smiled faintly. "It doesn't have to make sense. It only has to be true." I shook my head. "You're lying. You've been manipulating me, showing me things." Before I could finish, Claire blinked and looked up at me. Her voice was hollow when she spoke. "She's right," she whispered. "I remember the house now. I remember you." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" Her lips trembled. "We were here before. We both were. You told me to stay behind when the fire started." "What fire?" "The one that took everything," Mrs. Langley said softly. "You and she lived here once ago. Long ago, you built this house with your own hands. But when it burned, you swore to come back and rebuild it. And every lifetime, you try." "I don't believe you," I said again, but the conviction in my voice was gone. Mrs. Langley rose from the chair, her movements graceful, almost spectral. "You don't have to believe me. The house believes for you." Behind her, the walls began to shift, the photographs fluttering like leaves in the wind. The scent of smoke filled the air, faint at first, then stronger, acrid, choking. I looked down and saw flames licking at the floorboards, spreading fast. Claire didn't move. "Claire, we have to go," I shouted, reaching for her. She looked up at me, tears streaking her face. "We never left," she whispered. The room around us flickered, the walls warping between past and present. One moment, old wood and wallpaper, the next, my modern living room again. Through the haze of smoke, I saw Mrs. Langley watching me with those same piercing blue eyes. "You can run again, but you'll find your way back. The house remembers. It always will." The flames roared higher, swallowing her figure in light, and I dragged Claire toward the door. The heat seared my skin, The smoke filled my lungs, but I kept pulling until everything went white, blinding, searing white. Then silence. When I opened my eyes, I was standing outside in the cool night air. The house was gone. Nothing but a charred skeleton in its place. Claire was beside me, motionless, staring into the ruins. A soft breeze carried the faintest sound behind us. Slow, steady, unmistakable. Creak. Creak. The sound of the rocking chair. The sound drifted through the night like a memory refusing to fade. I turned slowly toward it, every nerve in my body tightening. There, among the smoldering remains, the rocking chair sat untouched by the fire. Its dark wood gleamed faintly under the moonlight, the quilt draped across its back fluttering gently as if moved by unseen hands.
Claire stood beside me, her face pale, eyes wide and glassy. How is it still there? She whispered. I couldn't answer. My mouth felt dry, my heart thundering against my ribs. Every rational thought screamed that it was impossible. The fire had devoured everything. The walls, the roof, even the ground beneath had cracked with heat. Yet that chair, that cursed chair, remained. Then it moved. Slowly, deliberately, it began to rock, back and forth, back and forth. The faint creak of its motion echoed through the ruins, steady and calm. A single trail of ash drifted off its armrest, floating towards us before disintegrating midair. I took a step backward, my hand instinctively reaching for Claire's arm. "We need to go," I whispered. But she didn't move. Her gaze was locked on the chair, unblinking. "Claire," I hissed, shaking her. She turned her head towards me at last, and my stomach twisted. Her eyes, once warm brown, were now icy, pale blue. "She's waiting," she said softly, her voice not entirely her own. "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. "Mrs. Langley," she murmured, her lips curling into that familiar, terrible smile. "She wants to talk to you." I stumbled back, shaking my head. "No, no more! She's gone, the house is gone." But even as I said it, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. The ashes trembled, swirling like black snow caught in a breeze. The night around us dimmed unnaturally, the air thickening with something cold and ancient. And then I heard her. "My dear," Mrs. Langley's voice cooed, echoing all around me, too close, too everywhere. "You did think fire could stop what was never born of flesh." The rocking chair stilled. From the shadows behind it, she emerged, perfectly composed, not a single burn on her skin, her cardigan pristine. The glow from her eyes flickered faintly like candlelight. "You don't belong here anymore," I said, though my voice trembled. Her expression softened. "You're wrong, child. You don't belong anywhere else." I shook my head, backing away until my heels hit the dirt road. "I don't want this. Whatever this is, I don't want it." Her smile faltered the first time, sorrow flickering across her face. "You always say that. Every time. You fight, you run, you burn it all down. But it never changes. The house finds you again. Because you're a part of it." I could feel tears stinging my eyes. "You're lying. I'm not one of you. I didn't build that house. I didn't live here before." Mrs. Langley tilted her head slightly, and for a moment her age fell away. Her face blurred, then sharpened again, but younger, softer. The cardigan vanished, replaced by a simple 19th century dress, dusted with soot. "Oh, but you did," she said. "You and I built it together. You were the dreamer. I was the keeper. We promised to protect what we created, but you forgot." The ground trembled again, the ruins of the house beginning to rise, not as debris, but as faint outlines of walls, forming from ash and shadow. Windows flickered into being like ghostly eyes opening. "Stop it!" I screamed, clutching my head. "Stop it!" But Claire, no, the thing wearing Claire's body, laughed softly. "You can't stop what's remembering itself." I turned to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The world warped around me, the road, the trees, the stars themselves bending like reflections in rippling water. And in the blur of motion, the house stood whole again, perfectly rebuilt, its windows glowing warm and inviting. The front door creaked open. "Come inside," Mrs. Langley said gently. "Just once more." I couldn't help it. My body moved forward as if pulled by invisible strings. Every step toward the house made my vision flicker with memories that weren't mine. Hands laying bricks, laughter echoing through unfinished halls, a promise whispered in the dark. "We'll always come back." When I crossed the threshold, everything shifted. The night vanished. I was standing in the living room, our living room, but not as it was before. The wallpaper was bright, new. The air smelled of fresh paint and lemon polish. Sunlight streamed through the windows. For a moment, it was peaceful. Then I saw the photographs. They covered every inch of the walls now, countless faces spanning generations, all watching me. And among them, at the very center, one stood out. It was a picture of me and Mrs. Langley, standing side by side in front of the house, smiling like old friends. My heart nearly stopped. She appeared beside me again, her voice almost a whisper. "You remember now, don't you?" "I don't want to remember," I whispered back, my throat tight. "I want my life. I want my family." She placed a hand on my shoulder. "You can't have both. The house only keeps one truth at a time." Before I could respond, a faint cry echoed from upstairs. A child's voice calling out, "Mama!" Every muscle in my body went rigid. The voice sounded so familiar, so heartbreakingly familiar that I couldn't breathe. I looked up toward the staircase. "Who's that?" I asked, but Mrs. Langley only smiled. "Yours," she said simply. The sound came again. "Mama, I'm scared." Something deep inside me cracked. My feet moved on their own as I climbed the stairs, each step groaning under my weight. At the top was a small hallway bathed in soft golden light. A door stood slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Inside was a child's room, old-fashioned, neatly kept. Toys scattered across the floor, sunlight filtering through lace curtains. And sitting on the bed was a little girl with curly hair and wide blue eyes. She looked up at me and smiled. "You came back," she said softly. I opened my mouth to speak, but no sound came. I didn't know this child, yet something deep in my bones recognized her. The shape of her face, the way her fingers twisted nervously in her lap. Behind me, Mrs. Langley's voice floated through the doorway. "You left her before. The fire took her. That's why you came back." I turned, tears spilling down my cheeks. "No," I whispered. "No, that's not true." Mrs. Langley stepped into the room, her expression tender. "It's always been true. This is where it ends and begins. Always." The little girl reached for my hand, her small fingers warm against mine. My lips trembled. "Who are you?" I asked, barely able to get the words out. She tilted her head, smiling softly. "You know who I am." I knelt in front of her, searching her face for something that made sense, something real. But every detail only deepened the unease. Her eyes, those same pale blue eyes, reflected light that wasn't there. Her curls framed her face just like mine did in old childhood photos. The more I looked, the more the truth pressed against the edges of my mind like a memory begging to surface. Mrs. Langley's voice came from behind me, calm and knowing. You named her Lily. She never stopped waiting. My breath caught. Lily? The name slipped from my tongue like a secret I hadn't meant to speak. The girl's face lit up at the sound of it, and she threw her arms around me. Don't leave again, Mama. A sharp ache spread through my chest, so sudden it stole my breath. I pulled back, staring at her. No, that's not... You're not mine. I don't have a daughter. I never had... The room flickered. For a moment, the walls burned, wallpaper curling into black ash. The floor glowed orange beneath my feet. Smoke filled my lungs. I coughed, grabbing the bedpost for balance. When the vision cleared, the room was whole again. Lily was gone. I spun around, panic rising. Where is she? What did you do? Mrs. Langley stood by the window, gazing out into the ghostly light beyond the glass. You did, she said softly. You left her that night when the fire began. You will always say you didn't mean to, but you always do.
I didn't, I said, shaking my head, backing away. I don't remember any fire. I don't remember any of this. That's the cruelty of memory, she murmured. The house takes what you can't bear to keep, but it doesn't forget. The rocking chair's sound grew louder, as if it had moved closer. The rhythm was hypnotic, steady, endless. The smell of smoke was everywhere now. I could almost hear the crackle of flames beneath the sound of the creaking wood. I want to leave, I said. I want to go back to my life. Mrs. Langley turned to face me fully. The years seemed to drain from her features once more. She looked ageless, ethereal. You can't go back to something that never existed, she said gently. That life, your friends, your job, your little house, it was the dream this time. This, she gestured to the room, to the house rebuilding itself around us. This is the waking. The floor beneath me trembled again. From the hallway below came the faint sound of footsteps. Light, cautious, familiar. Claire? I called, my voice cracking. No answer. I rushed toward the stairs, ignoring Mrs. Langley's voice calling after me. The air grew denser with every step, heavy with heat and whispering voices that seemed to crawl just beneath my skin. When I reached the bottom, I stopped cold. Claire stood in the living room, or what passed for it now. The walls were half ash, half structure, forming and unforming in waves. The air shimmered like liquid heat. She was staring at the rocking chair, her hands trembling at her sides. Claire, I said softly. She turned toward me, and I saw tears streaking her face. It showed me everything. The fire, the screaming, the smoke. You tried to save her. I shook my head, fighting to keep the room from spinning. No, I couldn't have. You ran back inside. You reached her room, but by then the roof was coming down. You were holding her. I saw it, and then... nothing.
A sharp pain pierced through my chest, like the echo of something I had once felt but forgotten long ago. My knees buckled. Images flashed before my eyes, flames crawling up the wallpaper, the crack of splitting wood, the sound of a child crying for help. My hands blackened with soot, reaching for her through the smoke. And then, nothing but white. The realization hit me like a blow. I wasn't alive. Not really. I hadn't been for a long time. Mrs. Langley appeared again, stepping out of the shifting haze, her expression neither cruel nor kind. "Now you understand," she said softly. "You never left. You never could. This place, our house, it binds what it loves too tightly to let go." I looked toward the chair. It was still moving, but now there was someone sitting in it. A woman with burnt, tattered clothes, her hair singed and falling around her face. She looked up at me slowly, and I saw myself staring back. My reflection smiled faintly from the rocking chair. The air around me pulsed, every heartbeat syncing with the movement of the chair. The ghostly version of me whispered something I could barely hear. "It's time." Claire screamed my name, reaching for me, but it was already too late. The air pulled me forward, dragging me toward the chair. My reflection's eyes glowed brighter, and I felt warmth, first on my skin, then deeper, through my bones. The world tilted. I tried to fight, tried to pull away, but the pull was irresistible. My hand brushed the armrest, and everything went still. No sound, no heat, no pain. Then I opened my eyes. The fire was gone. The walls were new again. The sunlight spilled through the windows. The air was clean, warm, calm. I was sitting in the rocking chair, the quilt resting gently over my lap. Outside, the world looked different, brighter somehow. I could hear birds singing, see the roses blooming in the garden. For a brief, perfect moment, peace filled me. Then I heard the crunch of footsteps on the gravel driveway. A car door slammed. Through the window, I saw a young couple standing at the edge of the path. The woman held a set of keys in her hand, smiling as she looked up at the house. "Looks even better than the pictures," she said. Her partner nodded. "It's perfect." They walked toward the porch, and I smiled. Because the house always finds someone new.
Because I remember now. Because I know what comes next. The chair began to rock again, slow and patient, as the front door creaked open. The moment they crossed the threshold, the air shifted, subtle, almost imperceptible, like the house itself was inhaling for the first time in years. The young woman shivered and rubbed her arms. "Did you feel that?" she asked. Her partner laughed softly. "It's just old houses, babe. They always creak and groan, probably settling." But I could feel it too. That slight hum in the walls, the quiet vibration that ran through the floorboards. The house was settling, yes, but not into stillness. It was settling into them. The woman stepped into the living room and looked around with wide eyes. "Oh, this is beautiful," she breathed. Her gaze caught the rocking chair near the window, my chair. "That's antique. It must have come with the place." Her partner frowned. "Didn't the realtor say it was unfurnished?" She tilted her head. "Maybe they forgot to take it out." I watched her fingers brush the top rail of the chair, light as a whisper. The wood gave a faint sigh beneath her touch. The tiniest shift, the smallest creak. She froze. Did that just... It's just wind, he interrupted, moving past her toward the hallway. Let's check upstairs. I smiled faintly. The house was patient. It always waited until one of them stayed behind, until one of them listened. The woman lingered in the living room, still staring at the chair. You know, this place feels familiar somehow. Her words rippled through the air like a current, stirring the dust motes that hung suspended in the sunlight. The house remembered that phrase. It had heard it before, in countless voices, in countless lifetimes. I watched as she circled the chair slowly, curiosity replacing caution. Her reflection in the window beside it seemed to move just a fraction slower than she did, her smile not quite matching her own. She didn't notice. They never did, not at first. Upstairs, I could hear her partner's footsteps echoing, floorboards groaning beneath his weight. He called down, "Babe, there's something weird about the attic door. It's nailed shut." The woman frowned. Maybe they didn't want people going up there. He didn't hear her. The wind carried his voice away, leaving her in a silence so complete she could hear her heartbeat. Then came the sound, a soft, rhythmic creaking. The chair began to rock on its own. The woman gasped, stepping back instinctively. Okay, that's not funny. The chair didn't stop. It swayed gently, steadily, as if unseen hands were moving it. She looked around the room, her breath quickening. Hello? The house exhaled again, a long, slow groan from the walls. I moved closer, invisible but present, my presence threading through the air like mist. She looked right through me, eyes darting to the corners where shadows lingered a moment too long. Then she saw it. The photograph. It sat on the mantel, just as it always did, though no one had ever placed it there. The edges were browned, the surface cracked from age. In it, the old house gleamed behind a smiling family, the mother, the father, the little girl. And behind them, faint but unmistakable, stood Mrs. Langley. The woman lifted the photo carefully, her hands trembling. "That's strange," she whispered. "They look just like..." She stopped, her throat tightening. "Just like us." Her partner came down the stairs. "Like who?" She turned the photo toward him. He froze mid-step, eyes narrowing. That's impossible. That looks exactly like you." A long silence followed. Then the house gave another sigh, a deeper one this time. The chair creaked louder. The woman's eyes filled with unease. "Let's just put it down. Maybe it's some old picture that got left here."
But when she turned back to the mantel, another photograph had appeared beside the first one, newer, sharper. This one showed them standing in front of the house, smiling as they were just minutes ago, keys in hand. The man's voice trembled. How did that get there?" The woman set the old photo down, but her fingers brushed the new one, and the moment she did, the image shimmered. Her smile in the picture twitched. The eyes glowed faintly blue. She dropped it, stumbling back. "Let's go," she said suddenly. "I don't like this." But the door they came through had closed on its own. The latch clicked softly. He rushed to it, twisting the knob. It stuck. Her breathing grew shallow, fast. "Please, open it." "I'm trying." The lights flickered, the air grew colder, and then the whisper came, faint, drawn out, the voice of the house itself. "Don't leave again." The woman spun around, eyes wide. Who said that? I watched her face, watched recognition spark in her eyes, though she didn't yet understand it. I could feel her confusion pressing against the veil between us, that thin boundary that kept me in memory and her in the present. But the house was dissolving that boundary, pulling her closer to the truth, to me. The man's voice cracked. "There's someone upstairs," he said. "I heard footsteps." She shook her head violently. "We're getting out. Now." He kept pulling at the handle until the wood began to splinter under his grip. But before he could break it open, the chair behind them stopped moving. The silence was deafening. Then a new sound. Laughter. Soft, girlish, echoing faintly down the hall. The woman froze. Did you hear that?" The man's eyes darted toward the staircase. "There's a child here." The laughter came again, closer this time. Then a small figure appeared at the top of the stairs. A little girl, no older than 6, her white dress shimmering faintly in the dim light. The woman's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God!" The child tilted her head, curls bouncing slightly. Her eyes were pale blue. She smiled, small and sweet, the kind of smile that once belonged to me. "Lily?" I whispered, but no sound left my lips. The little girl took a step down the stairs, then another, her bare feet leaving faint, ash-colored prints on each step. The man stumbled backward, dragging the woman behind him. What is this?" The girl stopped halfway down. "Mama," she said softly. The woman gasped. She called me." The rocking chair began to move again, slow and steady. The photograph on the mantel shifted once more, showing a new image. The little girl between the 2 new homeowners, smiling. The woman screamed. The lights shattered above them, plunging the room into darkness. And through that darkness, I felt the house awaken fully, its memory flooding back, its walls humming with power, with grief, with belonging. The chair rocked harder, the laughter grew louder, and I smiled because the cycle had begun again. The woman's scream faded into the thick, heavy air, swallowed by the house like it had been waiting to devour that sound for years. The man was shouting now, pounding on the door with his fists, the echo of each hit dissolving before it could fully bounce back. His voice wavered, his breath coming out ragged. "Someone help us! Please, is anyone out there?" But no one was. The neighborhood was quiet, the night outside perfectly still. The house stood at the end of a forgotten road, the kind that disappeared from maps after too many years of being left alone. It had been waiting, and it never let its visitors leave until it was finished. The little girl at the staircase tilted her head again, her smile faint and wrong, her gaze fixed on the woman. "Mama," she said once more, softer this time, "don't cry."
The woman backed away, her whole body trembling. "I'm not your mother," she whispered, though her voice sounded uncertain even to her. The little girl took another slow step down. "You promised you wouldn't leave again." The woman's partner grabbed her hand, tugging hard. "We're getting out of here. I don't care what we break." He twisted the door handle again, this time putting his shoulder into it, but the metal groaned and refused to move. The wood beneath the lock pulsed faintly, as though alive, and a splinter of it dug into his skin. He yelped, shaking his hand, and blood spotted the floorboards. The house reacted instantly. The walls seemed to draw in a breath, a deep trembling inhale that made every loose nail and warped plank vibrate in sympathy. The woman froze as the air temperature dropped suddenly, her breath visible in the dim light. The rocking chair began to move again, slow and rhythmic, and with each creak, the house seemed to breathe out heat, whispering voices curling through the air like smoke. "Home," they murmured. "Welcome home." The woman stumbled backward, her heel catching on a warped board, and she fell hard, her hand landing flat against the rug. Except it wasn't fabric beneath her palm, it was ash. She looked down and saw the faint outline of a handprint burned into the floorboards beneath the rug. Her voice cracked. "What is this place?" I wanted to tell her. I wanted to whisper that I'd asked that same question once, in the same room, with the same firelight flickering against my face. I wanted to warn her that it wasn't just a place. It was a memory, a wound that never healed. But I couldn't. I could only watch. The little girl reached the bottom of the stairs now, her bare feet silent on the boards. She was smiling still, though it wasn't a child's smile anymore. There was age in it, sadness too deep for her small face. Her dress shimmered faintly, the edges burned and curling inward, as if still remembering the fire that took her. The man moved in front of the woman, his voice shaking. "Stay back, whatever you are." But the girl didn't stop. She took another step, her eyes never leaving the woman's face. "You came back. You always come back." The room dimmed around them, colors fading to gray. The photographs on the walls melted and reformed, old faces, old families, repeating across generations. And there, always in the background, Mrs. Langley stood watching, her smile patient and proud. The man looked around wildly. "What's happening?" The woman's eyes were fixed on the girl, her body frozen in place. "She looks like me," she murmured. "God, she looks exactly like—" The girl reached out her hand. The woman didn't move away this time. When their fingers touched, the air split with a crack like thunder. The lights flared and then went out completely, plunging everything into darkness. I felt it, the rush, the heat, the collapse of time folding in on itself. For one unbearable second, I could hear all the voices of the house whispering at once. Every family, every soul it had ever claimed, all murmuring in unison, "Stay." Then the dark lifted. The fire was gone. The house was quiet. The man stood alone in the living room, panting, his eyes darting from wall to wall. The chair had stopped moving. The little girl was gone. The woman was gone too. "Anna?" he called, his voice breaking. "Anna, where are you?" No answer. He searched the rooms, throwing open doors, calling her name over and over, but the house remained utterly still. When he reached the staircase again, he froze. There, sitting in the rocking chair by the window, was Anna. At least, it looked like her. Her face was pale, her eyes distant. The photograph she dropped earlier now rested in her lap. She was humming softly, rocking in perfect rhythm with the creaking floorboards. The man exhaled shakily. "Anna, thank God you're okay." She turned her head slowly toward him, the motion too smooth, too careful. "I told you, it's perfect here." Something in her tone made his stomach twist. He took a step closer, and the faint smell of smoke met his nose. Not burning, not acrid, but faint and old, like the memory of something that had burned long ago.
She smiled. "You should stay." He opened his mouth to argue, but the walls groaned suddenly, and a low hum filled the air again. From the ceiling, fine black dust drifted down. Ash. Faint, but unmistakable. The man backed away slowly. "We're leaving," he said, more to himself than to her. "We're leaving right now." But when he turned toward the front door, it wasn't there anymore. Where the door had been was now solid wall, smooth, flawless plaster stretching from floor to ceiling. The windows were gone too. The light outside had dimmed to a strange, unnatural glow, as though the world beyond had been erased entirely. Behind him, the chair creaked once. "Please," he whispered, eyes darting around, "please let me out." Anna's voice was right behind him now, though she hadn't moved an inch. "It's too late. You're part of it now." He turned back toward her, but she wasn't there anymore. The chair rocked on its own, slow and steady, the photograph still lying across the seat.
The man stepped closer, drawn by something he couldn't name. He picked it up. In the photograph, the family had changed again. It wasn't the smiling strangers anymore. It was him and Anna standing in front of the house. The little girl stood between them, her blue eyes bright, her hand held in Anna's. As he stared, Anna's reflection in the glass blinked and smiled. The man's grip on the photograph trembled. He stared at it so long his eyes started to sting, but he couldn't look away. The image shimmered faintly under the flickering light, like water rippling under the surface. He blinked, and suddenly there was motion, his own face in the picture shifting, tilting ever so slightly, the faintest trace of a smile ghosting over his lips. He dropped the photo, heart hammering, and it landed face down with a soft thud. The silence that followed wasn't just absence of sound, it was presence. Heavy, watching, the kind of silence that hummed beneath the skin. "Anna?" His voice cracked, breaking through the stillness. "If this is some kind of trick, please stop." There was no answer, only the faint groan of the old beams overhead. He turned in a slow circle, the room spinning around him like a carousel that wouldn't stop. The furniture seemed closer now, the shadows deeper, stretching toward him across the floorboards. Something brushed past his arm, cold, barely there. He froze. "Who's there?" A whisper drifted from behind him, so close it brushed against his ear. "We're still here." He spun around, but there was nothing, just the rocking chair moving again, slow and steady. The photograph had flipped itself upright. The faces were smiling wider now, but little girl's hand was raised, as if waving. His breathing quickened. "No!" he said softly. "No, this isn't real. This isn't—" The sound of laughter interrupted him. High, soft, echoing from the hallway. A child's laugh. He backed away toward the stairs. The laughter came again, closer this time. "Stop it!" he whispered. "Please, stop!" Then faintly, from the darkness above, "Daddy?" He froze mid-step. The word pierced straight through him. "Daddy," the voice said again, quieter now, almost coaxing. He looked up. At the top of the stairs stood the little girl, Lily. Her eyes glowed faintly blue in the dim light. She was smiling, her head tilted to one side. "Come play," she said. He shook his head slowly. "You're not real." Her expression didn't change. "You said you'd read me a story." Something in her tone, innocent, familiar, heartbreakingly sweet, made his knees weak. His throat tightened. "I don't know you," he whispered. But she only smiled wider. "You will." And then she turned and walked back into the shadows of the hallway, her form flickering like a candle flame, before vanishing entirely. He stood frozen for what felt like forever, every instinct screaming at him to run, but his feet wouldn't move. Something deeper than fear held him there, an inexplicable pull, like gravity had shifted, like the house itself was reeling him in. Finally, he forced himself to the staircase and began to climb, one trembling step at a time. Each board creaked beneath his weight, groaning like it didn't want to hold him. The higher he went, the thicker the air became, filled with a faint smell of smoke and something else, something sweet, almost floral, like burnt roses. When he reached the landing, the hallway stretched before him, impossibly long. The wallpaper peeled in thin strips, revealing layers beneath, different patterns, different eras, as though the house had been rebuilt on top of itself again and again. He called out softly, "Lily?"
The floorboards whispered under his feet as he moved forward. A faint glow spilled from a door at the end of the hall, the attic. The one he'd said was nailed shut. But it wasn't anymore. The nails lay scattered across the floor like dropped teeth, and the door was open just a crack, golden light spilling through. He hesitated, his hand hovering near the doorknob. "Anna?" He tried again, though his voice barely rose above a whisper. When no answer came, he pushed the door open. The attic was filled with light, but not the clean kind from bulbs or lamps. It was warm, hazy.
Lily laughed softly, running across the floor, her curls bouncing. "Home," she said again. Anna smiled at him. "We can rest now." But he shook his head, trembling. "Then why are we still here?" Anna's smile didn't fade. "Because someone new just moved in." Downstairs, faintly, came the sound of a door creaking open. Footsteps. The house shivered in delight, and the rocking chair began to move again. The first sound was laughter, faint, muffled, rising up through the floorboards like sunlight filtering through water. Then came footsteps, slow, uncertain, curious, the kind of footsteps that always began the same way, no matter who they belonged to. The new couple was exploring. Every generation did. Anna and I stood together at the top of the stairs, the house glowing around us in soft golden light. We weren't solid anymore. Not entirely, but we could feel every pulse of the house's heartbeat. It was ours now, as much a part of us as breath once was. "They're here," Anna said quietly, her voice almost reverent. "It's starting again." Below us, the new homeowners moved from room to room, their voices a soft hum of admiration and discovery. The woman gasped when she saw the old fireplace, the man laughed when he tripped on a creaky step. They looked so alive, so unaware of what waited between the walls. "Do you ever get used to it?" I asked. Anna turned her head toward me. There was peace in her eyes now, but also something else, an ancient weariness that even death hadn't erased. "No one ever does," she said softly. "But the house needs them. It needs someone to remember." Lily giggled from where she sat in the rocking chair, swinging her legs back and forth. "They're nice," she said cheerfully. "I like them." I watched her, that eternal child, untouched by time, by the tragedy that had birthed her. The fire had taken her body, but not her laughter. The house had given her that much, an endless moment to exist in, a memory that never faded. "They always start nice," I murmured. Downstairs, the couple's laughter echoed again. The woman paused, staring up the staircase as if sensing us. Her smile faltered. "Did you hear that?" she asked. Her husband frowned. "Hear what?" She hesitated. "It sounded like someone talking." He chuckled. "This old place creaks like crazy. Probably just the wind." Anna smiled faintly. "That's what you said the first night," she whispered. I almost smiled back. "You never let me forget anything, do you?" She leaned closer, her presence warm even in its ghostly state. "If we forget, we become nothing but echoes. The house forgets too, and then everything it ever held will be lost." Below, the woman's footsteps grew louder. She was approaching the living room, the heart of the house, where it always began. She stopped before the rocking chair, her hand brushing its curved arm. A faint chill ran through her, and she pulled back slightly, frowning. "This chair feels—" She trailed off, uncertain. Her husband called from another room. "Feels what?" "Familiar," she whispered. The word vibrated through the air, through the wood, through us. The house responded instantly, the faintest hum running through its bones. A signal. A pulse. Lily's eyes lit up. "She remembers!" Anna kneeled beside her. "Not yet, sweetheart. but she will. The man reappeared in the doorway laughing. You and your imagination. Come on, let's see the kitchen. He reached out, took her hand, and together they walked away. The chair rocked once, slowly, as though waving goodbye. For a while, the house was quiet again. The dust danced in the light, the windows shimmered, and everything looked perfect, untouched. But it never stayed that way. Will they see us? I asked. Eventually, Anna replied. The house chooses when to show us, when it's ready.
And when it's done? Her eyes softened. Then it lets them go, or keeps them. It depends on what they remember. The words hung in the air like smoke. I looked down the stairs, watching the couple moving through our old home, laughing about the crooked doorframe, marveling at the strange beauty of a place that had stood untouched for so many years. They didn't know the history beneath their feet, the way the floors were layered with ash and memory. They would, soon enough. The hours passed. The sun set. The house shifted into its night rhythm, breathing, creaking, waiting. From the attic, faint light spilled down the walls. From the basement, the faint smell of roses and smoke intertwined. Every piece of the house came alive again, just as it always did when new life entered it. Anna stood beside the window, her gaze distant. When the fire took us, she said quietly, I thought that was the end, but the house didn't let us go. It keeps what it loves too tightly. Maybe that's the curse. I looked at her, really looked at her. Or maybe it's mercy. Maybe it keeps us because it can't bear to forget. Her lips curved slightly. You always tried to find kindness in it. And you never did. She laughed softly. One of us has to. Below us, the couple had turned on music, old jazz playing softly through a small speaker. The woman hummed along, and for a brief moment, the house seemed to sigh in contentment. Even the rocking chair stilled. I walked toward it, placing a ghostly hand on the top rail. The memory of wood met me, not the real thing. It was enough. I could almost feel the warmth of it, almost hear the echoes of every family who had ever sat here before. They'll think it's haunted, I said quietly. Anna's reflection appeared beside mine in the dark glass. They're right. I turned toward her. Do you ever wonder if we're the ghosts or if the house is? She smiled. Maybe both. Maybe we're the same thing now. The light in the room flickered once, softly, almost tenderly, and I knew the house agreed. Downstairs, the couple's laughter quieted. The woman's voice floated up, tinged with something uncertain. Did you leave the fireplace open? No, the man said. Because I swear I smell... Smoke? I whispered with her, the word leaving my lips like a secret. The air shimmered, the lights dimmed. The fire that had once taken us all flickered back to life in the grate. Not real flame, but memory. The house's heartbeat. The couple stood frozen, watching as the old rocking chair began to move, slow and deliberate. The man took a step forward. There's someone in the chair. The woman grabbed his arm. Don't! But it was too late. He reached out. His fingers brushed the air above the wood, and everything changed. The photographs on the walls began to shift again. The colors bled and reformed, showing new faces, new lives. The couple's faces, their smiles. The house had already chosen. Anna took my hand, her touch feather-light. It begins again, she whispered. Lily's laughter filled the air, pure and bright. The house groaned, stretching its walls as if waking from a long sleep. The rocking chair creaked in rhythm, and for a briefest moment, the world outside disappeared entirely. There was only the light, the whisper, the heartbeat of memory. And then everything was still again. Perfect, peaceful, waiting.
Somewhere in the quiet, a soft voice whispered from the dark, "Welcome home."